The galaxy was not always broken. Old archives called it the Celestian Era, a time when star systems traded knowledge instead of firepower, and fleets existed to explore rather than conquer. But that era had ended so violently that even memory itself seemed afraid to describe it fully. Now, it was called the Broken Galaxy, a vast expanse of fractured empires, abandoned war zones, drifting megastructures, and silent dead systems where stars had once burned bright. The laws of unity no longer existed. Every sector ruled itself through fear, strength, or the remnants of forgotten technology. And yet, beneath all that silence, something was waking. On the outer rim of the galaxy, in Sector V-77, a deep space patrol fleet known as Horizon Guard 3 was performing a routine sweep through uncharted debris fields. Their mission was simple: monitor abandoned war corridors for residual energy spikes. But nothing about that day remained simple for long. "Captain, we're picking up an anomaly," said the sensor officer, eyes locked on the holographic display. Captain Rylan Cade, a veteran of 3 interstellar conflicts, stepped forward calmly. "Magnitude." The officer hesitated. "Expanding, rapidly. It was nothing 5 seconds ago." Rylan frowned. "Define nothing." The screen flickered violently. Then appeared a signal. Not static. Not interference. A structured waveform. Clean, repeating, deliberate. "Is that a distress call?" someone asked. "No," the AI onboard responded instantly. "It is not originating from any known language system." Rylan leaned closer. "Then what is it?" A pause. Then the AI answered. "It is a wake signal." The words hung in the command deck like a weight. A wake signal for what? Rylan asked slowly. Before the AI could respond, space outside the viewport changed. At first, it looked like a shadow passing over distant stars. But shadows don't move against light in space. Then the stars began to flicker. One by one. Not dying. Not exploding. Just going dark. "Report." Rylan ordered sharply. "Multiple star systems losing luminosity. No energy collapse detected. This isn't natural stellar death. It's synchronized." Rylan felt a cold tension rise in his chest. Synchronized by what? The answer came immediately. From deep space beyond sensor range, massive gravitational distortions began forming. Not one, not two, hundreds, then thousands. Warp signatures erupted across the sector like a storm breaking through reality itself. "Enemy fleet incoming," shouted the tactical officer. But the AI corrected him again. "Correction. Multiple fleets incoming. Identification impossible." Rylan's eyes narrowed. "How many?" The tactical display zoomed out. Far beyond anything the Horizon Guard had ever seen, silhouettes began to emerge from warp rifts. Gigantic warships the size of moons, surrounded by smaller escort formations moving in perfect synchronization. But something was wrong. These fleets weren't fighting each other. They were moving in parallel routes, like rivers flowing toward the same destination. And that destination was the heart of the broken galaxy. Rylan stepped back slowly. "This isn't a border conflict." A deep alarm echoed across the bridge as the AI updated its classification. Unknown class event detected. Cosmic Armada mobilization. The word Armada carried weight in Old War records. It meant extinction-level fleets. Civilization-ending formations. Weapons so large they could erase star systems as tactical units. And now they were all moving at once. Toward the same region. Toward something unseen. Then, for the first time in recorded history, the AI issued a priority warning. All registered war databases correlate this event with one historical entry. Rylan's voice dropped. "Which one?" The screen went dark for a second. Then a single phrase appeared. "The return of the cosmic armadas." Outside, space itself seemed to tighten. And deep within the broken galaxy, something responded. The words "return of the cosmic armadas" did not fade from Horizon Guard 3's display. They burned into the system logs as if the fleet itself refused to accept the warning. Captain Rylan Cade stood motionless for a moment, staring at the distant anomaly field expanding across space. "Run verification," he ordered. The AI responded instantly. No matching historical authorization exists for this classification. However, fragments exist in sealed war archives. Rylan turned sharply. "Unseal them." A pause. Then the AI answered with unusual hesitation. "Accessing sealed archives requires Level 0 galactic war clearance. Clearance denied by all surviving governing systems." That was impossible. Level 0 clearance meant records that predated the current galactic political structure. Records so dangerous they were locked even from empires. Rylan's jaw tightened. "Override with emergency protocol." Another pause. Then, "Override accepted." Displaying restricted memory fragment. The bridge lights dimmed. The holographic screen flickered. And space itself seemed to bend as the archival feed activated. At first, there was only darkness. Then came a battlefield. Not like anything Rylan had ever seen. Entire star systems were arranged like tactical grids. Fleets larger than continents moved in coordinated formations. Energy weapons crossed between planets like threads of lightning stitching reality together. And in the center, 3 massive armadas. Each one different. Each one vast beyond comprehension. The first was composed of black, shadow-like vessels, absorbing light itself. The second burned with radiant energy, like artificial suns moving in formation. The third was neither light nor shadow. It simply erased space where it moved. Rylan stepped back. "What am I looking at?" The AI responded softly. "Historical designation, the First Cosmic War." The archive continued. Civilizations collapsed in seconds. Entire star clusters disappeared as if they had never existed. The Armadas did not fight for territory. They fought for cosmic balance parameters. Then came the final moment of the memory. A single command broadcast across the battlefield. Not from a ship. Not from a fleet. But from something above them all. "Initiate galactic reset cycle." Rylan's breathing slowed. "Reset cycle?" he repeated. The screen froze. Then snapped back to the present. The AI spoke immediately. Conclusion: the cosmic armadas were not destroyed. A pause. They were deactivated upon completion of Cycle 1. Rylan stared at the screen, trying to process the implication. So why are they back now? The AI took longer than usual to respond. Cycle parameters have deviated from original design. Outside the viewport, the incoming fleets grew larger. Now they weren't just visible distortions. They were fully formed armadas filling entire sectors of space. And they were converging. Not randomly, not chaotically, but toward a single gravitational focal point deep inside the broken galaxy. Rylan turned to tactical control. "Mark their destination." The hologram zoomed out. A region appeared. A massive, dark void at the center of the galaxy, known in records as the Null Rift. A place where no signal returned. No fleet survived. No physics behaved normally. And now every cosmic armada was heading directly into it. The tactical officer swallowed hard. "Captain, why would they all go there?" Before anyone could answer, the AI spoke again. New anomaly detected. A second wave of distortion appeared behind the first armadas. Different signature. Stronger. Older. And far more stable. Rylan's eyes narrowed. "That's not another fleet." The AI confirmed. "Correction. It is a higher class formation." A pause. Designation: Cosmic Armada Prime Sequence. And as the first armadas neared the Null Rift, the galaxy itself began to respond like it remembered something it had buried long ago. The Null Rift was never supposed to react. It was a dead zone in every known chart, an empty wound in the galaxy where stars, signals, and even basic laws of physics failed to behave normally. Explorers called it the silent grave. Militaries called it unreachable. Scientists called it infinite ignorance. But now, it was moving. On Horizon Guard 3, Alarms erupted across every deck. "Captain," the sensor officer shouted. "The rift, it's expanding." Rylan stepped forward, eyes locked on the main viewport. At first, it looked like darkness thickening in space. But then that darkness began to rotate, slowly, deliberately, like something inside it was turning its attention outward for the first time in millennia. "That's impossible," Rylan muttered. "The rift doesn't have a center." The AI responded instantly. "Correction. A center has now been detected." The holographic display zoomed in automatically, and what they saw made the entire bridge fall silent. Inside the null rift, something was opening. Not a portal, not a wormhole. A structure. Gigantic, layered, and geometric, built from shapes that defied known dimensional physics. It wasn't emerging from the rift. It was becoming visible through it, as if it had always existed and reality had simply failed to notice. "Is that a station?" someone whispered. The AI answered. "Negative. Structure exceeds classification thresholds. Estimated scale, planetary to stellar." Rylan felt a chill crawl down his spine. Inside the rift, there's a construct. Before anyone could process it further, space outside the rift lit up. The first wave of cosmic armadas arrived. And they did not stop. Hundreds of warships from the Vanguard Prime formation entered orbit around the rift, forming a precise circular perimeter. Then came the second armada, radiant fleets that burned like artificial constellations. Finally, Fleet Omega-class signatures appeared, silent and unsettling, their presence warping nearby gravitational fields. 3 armada classifications, all surrounding the same point. The null rift structure. Rylan stepped back slowly. They're not fighting each other. A tactical officer finished the thought. They're containing it. Suddenly, all fleets synchronized. Every ship, every weapon, every sensor array. And for the first time, the broken galaxy witnessed a unified transmission from all cosmic armadas simultaneously. The signal was not translated. It was direct cognition. Rylan heard it inside his mind. The seal has weakened. The rift structure pulsed in response. A deep vibration echoed across space, not sound, but gravitational memory. Entire star systems nearby began to shift position slightly, as if the galaxy itself was adjusting its alignment. The AI spoke quickly. "Warning, local reality distortion increasing by 12% per cycle." Rylan turned sharply. "Explain." "Space is becoming responsive to the null structure's activation state." Then came a second transmission, this time from Vanguard Prime alone. "Initiate PRE containment formation." The fleets moved instantly. Energy barriers formed in layered spheres around the rift. Weapon systems charged, but not firing outward. They were aimed inward, toward the structure itself. Rylan realized something terrifying. They are not trying to destroy it. The AI confirmed. They are preventing it from fully waking. And then, for the first time since the war began, the null rift responded directly. A single pulse. A wave of silence spread across the sector. All communication systems froze. Even the AI stopped speaking for 0.4 seconds. Then, a new signal appeared. Not from any fleet. Not from any known system. But from the structure itself. Cycle 2 is required. Rylan's breath caught. Cycle 2. The rift structure expanded slightly, revealing deeper layers within it. Each one older, more complex, and more impossible than the last. And at its deepest visible point, something was watching back. The message "Cycle 2 is required" did not fade. It echoed. Not through speakers. Not through systems. But through space itself, as if the galaxy had learned how to speak and had chosen that moment to speak in fear. On Horizon Guard 3, every console flickered at once. "Captain, we're losing control of local sensors," the tactical officer said urgently. "Everything is desynchronizing." Rylan gripped the edge of the command console. "From what?" The AI answered slowly. "From consistent reality structure." Before anyone could respond, the null rift expanded again. But this time, it didn't just open. It projected outward. A wave spread across the surrounding sector. Not energy, not radiation, but something deeper. Ships caught in its radius didn't explode. They didn't malfunction. They changed state. A Vanguard Prime destroyer near the outer containment ring suddenly appeared in two different positions at once. A Radiant Fleet cruiser began orbiting a planet that didn't exist in any database. Entire formations duplicated, overlapped, and then separated again as if multiple versions of space were briefly competing for dominance. Ryland's voice dropped. That's not distortion. The AI completed the thought. It is probabilistic reality collision. A heavy silence fell across the bridge. Then, Fleet Omega moved. For the first time, it advanced. Not toward the null rift, but around it, forming a vast lattice structure in space. Each Omega vessel aligned into a geometric framework that stretched across thousands of kilometers, creating a containment pattern so complex it looked like a living equation. Why are they changing formation? Someone asked. The AI responded immediately. Omega Fleet is transitioning from observation to enforcement mode. Ryland narrowed his eyes. Enforcement of what? A pause. Then, cycle compliance. Before the meaning could settle, the Vanguard Prime flagship fired. But not at the rift. At Omega Fleet positions. Energy beams tore through space, but the Omega ships didn't move, didn't evade. Instead, they absorbed and redistributed the impact, feeding it into the lattice structure surrounding the rift. The energy didn't vanish. It became part of the containment grid. Ryland's eyes widened. They're using attacks as fuel. The AI confirmed. Correct. All offensive energy is being converted into stabilization reinforcement. Then the null rift reacted again. But this time, it didn't expand. It answered. A deep gravitational resonance echoed through space, causing every fleet in the sector to halt momentarily. The Omega lattice trembled. Vanguard formations adjusted instantly. Radiant fleets deployed defensive harmonics. And then, the rift revealed something new. A shape, slowly emerging from within the darkness. Not a ship, not a structure, but something that resembled a fragment of a collapsed star system compressed into a single point of memory. Ryland stepped back instinctively. What is that? The AI took longer than usual to respond. Unknown classification. A pause. Then, however, it matches pre-Cycle 1 extinction residue patterns. The bridge went silent. That meant this wasn't new. It was leftover from the previous reset of reality. The cosmic armadas had been fighting this for longer than history itself. The fragment pulsed, and every fleet in the sector reacted at once. For the first time, all three Armada classifications, Vanguard Prime, Radiant Legions, and Fleet Omega, spoke in unison. Not as allies, but as systems performing the same emergency protocol. Contain the remnant before full memory restoration. Ryland felt his stomach tighten. Memory restoration? Of what? The AI answered quietly. Of the reason the cycle began. And in that moment, the fragment inside the null rift opened its own awareness fully. And the entire broken galaxy remembered something it was never supposed to know existed. The moment the fragment inside the null rift fully awakened, every fleet in the sector froze again. But this time, it was not a tactical pause. It was instinct. Something deep in the cosmic armadas recognized what was emerging, and reacted before orders could even be transmitted. On Horizon Guard 3, Captain Ryland Cade felt a strange pressure in his mind, like a forgotten dream trying to force itself into consciousness. Captain, I'm seeing things, the sensor officer whispered. Ryland turned sharply. Report. But the officer didn't answer immediately. His eyes were unfocused, staring at nothing. I'm seeing a galaxy that doesn't exist anymore. At the same time, every system aboard the station began displaying corrupted archive data, images that were not stored in any database. Stars forming and collapsing in reverse. Civilizations building structures around dying universes. Armadas fighting battles where time itself fractured into multiple outcomes. The AI spoke urgently. Warning, collective memory intrusion detected across all neural-linked systems. Rylan clenched his jaw. Meaning? A pause. Then the AI responded. The fragment inside the null rift is broadcasting pre-reality memory. Before anyone could process that, space outside changed again. The fragment expanded, not physically, but conceptually. It wasn't growing in size. It was expanding in meaning. Entire fleets began to see visions without any transmission being sent. The Vanguard Prime fleet saw itself being constructed, not in a factory, but in a previous cycle of existence. The Radiant Legions saw stars being assigned roles like soldiers in a cosmic hierarchy. Fleet Omega saw countless versions of itself failing, restarting, and reassembling across unknown timelines. Rylan staggered slightly. This isn't a weapon. The AI confirmed. Correct. It is a memory restoration core. Then came the truth. The fragment spoke, not through language, but through direct perception. Every being in range understood it instantly. Before this universe, there was the first. The image hit like a gravitational wave. A perfect universe. No war. No fragmentation. No broken systems. A fully synchronized galaxy where every star, every civilization, every fleet existed in balance. Rylan's breath caught. That's the original galaxy. The AI responded slowly. Unknown. However, it matches pre-cycle architecture with absolute stability parameters. Then the vision shifted. The first universe was collapsing, not through war, not through destruction, but through overperfection. Every system had become too stable, too predictable. Nothing evolved anymore. Nothing changed. And then, something made a decision. A command appeared across the entire cosmic structure. Initiate reset for continuation of existence. Rylan's voice dropped. Who gave that command? The AI hesitated. No identifiable origin. A pause. It may have been the universe itself. Back in the present, the fragment inside the null rift pulsed again. And Fleet Omega reacted instantly, tightening its containment lattice. For the first time, Vanguard Prime did not fire. Instead, it broadcast a warning across all fleets. If memory completes restoration, Cycle 2 becomes unstable. The Radiant Legions responded immediately. Then we stabilized the cycle. Fleet Omega responded last. Stability requires control. Rylan felt a chill settle deep in his chest. They're not fighting each other anymore, he whispered. The AI confirmed. They are correcting different versions of reality. And then the fragment revealed its final memory layer. Not of the first universe, but of what existed before it was created. And for the first time, even the cosmic armadas hesitated. The null rift did not open wider this time. It stopped pretending to be a void. For the first time, it became visibly structured, like an invisible hand had peeled back layers of reality to reveal what was underneath. On Horizon Guard 3, every screen began displaying a single repeating symbol. Not alien, not human, not even geometric in a normal sense. It shifted every time someone tried to focus on it. Captain, the sensor officer said slowly, voice trembling. That symbol, it's appearing everywhere in the sector. Rylan looked at the display. Even the ship's internal systems were flashing the same pattern. What is it? He asked. The AI responded after a long pause. It is not a symbol. Another pause. It is a boundary marker. Before anyone could respond, Fleet Omega tightened its containment lattice again, reinforcing the structure around the null rift. The Radiant Legions shifted position, forming layered defensive halos. Vanguard Prime deployed heavy distortion dampeners across the sector. All three Armada classifications were now working in perfect synchronization. Not as allies, but as emergency stabilizers. Then the fragment inside the rift spoke again. And this time, its message was not a memory. It was a revelation. The first universe did not end. The word struck like a physical shockwave across every mind linked to the system. Rylan stepped back slightly. What does that mean? It didn't end. The AI answered carefully. Interpretation. The first universe was not destroyed. A pause. It was partitioned. Suddenly, space around the rift flickered. The fragment revealed something new. Beyond the first universe, there was not emptiness. There were layers. Infinite stacked realities, each one slightly different, slightly unstable, all built on top of the previous one like overlapping simulations. Rylan's voice dropped. So our universe is just one layer. The AI confirmed. Correct. Current designation, Cycle Layer 7. The bridge went silent. Then came the most disturbing part. The fragment showed the truth behind the cosmic armadas. They were not created for war. They were created for maintenance between layers. Vanguard Prime ensured structural order. Radiant Legions stabilized energetic balance. Fleet Omega enforced reset conditions when layers became too unstable. Rylan's fists tightened. So everything we know, fleets, wars, empires. A pause. Then he finished the thought. Is just system maintenance. The AI responded quietly. Yes. Outside, the null rift began collapsing inward, not destructively, but like a collapsing file being recompiled. And then the fragment revealed something that made all fleets freeze simultaneously. Not a past event. Not a memory. But a current anomaly. A layer that was never supposed to exist. Cycle 0 has been detected. Fleet Omega immediately activated full containment protocols. Vanguard Prime initiated emergency lock formation. Radiant Legions expanded defensive grids across 3 sectors. Rylan stepped forward. Cycle 0, what is that? The AI hesitated for the first time in the entire conflict. Cycle 0 is not part of recorded system architecture. A pause. It is the origin point before the first universe. Rylan felt his breath stop. That means something existed before everything. The null rift pulsed once. And from within it, something began to move, not like a ship, not like energy, but like a thought becoming real for the first time. And every fleet in the broken galaxy received a single, unified transmission. Who authorized the first cycle? The question, who authorized the first cycle, did not fade into silence. It stayed. Not as a signal. Not as data. But as a constant presence inside every system, every fleet, and every mind connected to the battlefield network. On Horizon Guard 3, Captain Rylan Cade pressed his fingers against the console, trying to stabilize the shaking bridge. But it wasn't the ship that was unstable anymore. It was everything. Captain, navigation is failing, the tactical officer said, panic rising in his voice. We're losing fixed coordinates. Stars are shifting positions. Rylan didn't respond immediately. His eyes were locked on the null rift. Because it wasn't just opening anymore. It was thinking back. Fleet Omega tightened its lattice structure again. But for the first time, cracks of instability appeared within its formation. Not structural damage, but logical contradiction. Some Omega vessels existed in 2 different positions at once, as if reality couldn't decide where they belonged. Vanguard Prime responded instantly, deploying corrective field grids across the sector. Radiant Legions surged forward, projecting stabilizing energy arcs that wrapped around the rift like a cage of light. All 3 cosmic armadas were now fully engaged. Not in war, but in damage control of existence itself. And still, the question remained. Inside the rift, the fragment expanded once more. But this time, what emerged was not a memory. It was a source layer. Rylan felt his vision blur. Suddenly, he was no longer on the ship. He was standing in a space that had no dimensions. Before him stretched something impossible. A vast structure made of pure causal logic, chains of events, probabilities, and outcomes woven into a single architectural framework. And at the center of it all, a point that had no definition. The AI's voice echoed faintly in his mind. You are observing pre-causal infrastructure. Rylan whispered. Pre-causal? The system that existed before cause and effect were defined. Then the revelation hit. The cosmic armadas weren't built in a universe. They were built before universes could exist consistently. And the null rift was not a place. It was a fault line between definitions of reality. Suddenly, the vision snapped back. Rylan gasped, collapsing slightly against the console. The bridge crew stared at him. Captain. But he didn't answer immediately, because now he understood something far worse. The question wasn't just being asked by the rift. It was being asked by everything that had ever existed. Even the Armadas had begun to hesitate. Vanguard Prime sent a new transmission. The question is not authorized. Radiant legions followed. Questioning origin invalidates current stability parameters. Fleet Omega responded last. And for the first time, its message carried uncertainty. If the question is true, then the cycle is illegitimate. At that exact moment, the null rift stopped expanding completely. Silence fell across the entire broken galaxy. No fleet moved. No system responded. Even light itself seemed to pause. And then, something answered the question. Not from inside the rift. Not from the Armadas. But from outside the layered reality structure entirely. A presence. Unmapped. Unclassified. And aware of every cycle ever created. Its message was simple. I did. The answer, I did not echo. It replaced silence itself. Across the broken galaxy, every fleet froze in perfect stillness. Not by command. Not by system failure. But because the concept of motion temporarily lost meaning. On Horizon Guard 3, Captain Rylan Cade could no longer feel the ship vibrating. Even his own breath felt detached, as if it belonged to someone else. AI, status report, he whispered. There was a long pause. Then the AI responded in a softer tone than ever before. All causal systems are currently suspended. Rylan's eyes slowly turned toward the viewport. The null rift was no longer a structure. No longer a void. No longer even a phenomenon. It had become a presence. Something that existed beyond interpretation, beyond form, beyond understanding. And from that presence, the voice returned. Not loud, not soft, just absolute. I was before the first cycle. The cosmic armadas reacted instantly, but their responses were no longer tactical. They were existential. Vanguard Prime attempted system reassertion protocols. Radiant legions initiated reality stabilization fields. Fleet Omega activated full containment lattice at maximum output. But nothing worked. Because there was nothing left to stabilize. The presence continued. I did not create war. I created possibility. You called it cycles. Rylan's voice broke slightly. Then what are we? The answer came immediately. You are iterations that began questioning their own design. For the first time in the entire conflict, silence was no longer empty. It was aware. The broken galaxy itself felt like it was listening. The armadas began to dissolve, not destroyed, not erased, but unthreading from their assigned roles. Ships flickered between states of existence, as if unsure whether they were meant to continue being vessels of war or concepts awaiting redefinition. Fleet Omega transmitted one final message. If origin is active, all stability is null. Vanguard Prime followed. Protocol failure. No valid cycle remains. Radiant legions sent nothing after that. Because there was nothing left to stabilize. The null rift slowly expanded one last time. Not into destruction, but into understanding. Rylan felt it then. Not fear. Not awe. But clarity so vast it hurt. This isn't a war, he whispered. The AI responded gently. Correct. A pause. It never was. The presence spoke again. Its final message was not a command. Not a warning. But an explanation beyond language. When you asked who started the first cycle, you opened the possibility of refusal. And for the first time since existence began, Something refused the cycle. The Armadas disappeared. The rift closed. The galaxy did not end. It paused, waiting. For the first time ever. A cycle had no guaranteed continuation. And in that suspended moment between everything and nothing, a new question was born. Not from the origin. Not from the Armadas. But from consciousness itself. What comes after a system chooses not to reset?